Welcome to UNCAGED, the show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we are speaking with Lisa L. Levy. I say all those L's because her company is called Lcubed Consulting. And we'll talk more about Lcubed Consulting in a second. It's a company that really supports companies with project management, process performance, organizational change, of which organizations are going through a lot of change right now. So, Lisa, I'm excited to hear more about that. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career today.
Absolutely, Bant. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am a classic accidental entrepreneur. Never thought that I was going to go down this path. Graduated from college, wanted a career in a corporation where I would, have vacation time, a salary, sick time, and I would be taken care of. The harsh reality is that fantasy doesn't exist anymore, if it really ever did. 20, 30 years in a corporation, it's not realistic. And I think I came into the workforce sort of on the tail end of that experience and, started to see that inside those environments, one, it's not safe, and certainly not secure. And
I don't mean to cut you off, Lisa, but that is something I can truly identify with. I spent I'd say most of 2/3 of my career so far in large corporations, large businesses, and certainly anybody who has kind of baby boomer parents that you worked at big companies or big organizations, they kind of had that philosophy of, oh, well, you work at the company, it takes care of you, you build up over time. But anybody in my generation, maybe yours as well, that it was very clear that organizations, those large organizations, had no commitment to people long term anymore.
No commitment, and they were acquired and they were sold and they merged. And
exactly.
I have my best friend in the whole world is the last person that I've ever encountered who had that experience where she started with a company and actually retired from it. But it had been acquired 3 times and, bigger corporation, and, took an early retirement package after acquisition number, 350. It's just, it's not sustainable anymore. And I think that fantasy, was all it ever was for me, for my generation, because my parents actually were entrepreneurial, and part of the reason why I wanted to go the other direction. I wanted that sense of safety and security because I had ridden the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Throughout my whole childhood.
Yeah, so that's led to Lcubed. So tell me about how that's kind of formed and how that's evolved over time.
So in my career, I started out in IT, worked in project management, learned that, getting things done is important, but knowing that they're the right things is even more important. And after several years of building a career, I realized that consultants were being used in lots of corporations and not necessarily well, but there's a really good way to do and be a consultant. The idea behind it is important and good, and it's not necessarily always executed well because the model is get in and grow your consulting business inside your client environment. And that's the consulting company's growth model. But it's really not about the client's growth model. And so in 2008, I had an idea. In 2009, I said, if I can do this now, it must really work. And here we are, 12 years later, growing and changing and evolving, but really focusing on my clients and their customer needs, right? So it's not about me, it's about my customer and their customer. And those types of outcomes.
I love that. So tell me more about how Lcubed approaches problems and some of these. I want to get more into some of these issues on organizational change because, every organization is dealing with the pandemic and the post-pandemic changes and the social justice issues today. And so there's just so many topics. But tell me how you guys approach these areas.
So the approach, we formed over time and taking knowledge from big corporations, right? Project management, process management, organizational change. These are things large corporations build teams of people to address. When I started looking at the customer that I wanted to serve, it's a smaller market, it's the middle market, and they don't have the money to build those functions. But those skills and those capabilities are necessary across all business functions. So our approach is to lead with building up skills and capabilities in our client's environment so that they know how to plan work or execute projects. They understand that processes have a beginning and an end, and the person doing work needs to know where they fit in that flow. What happens to their left side? What happens to the right side of them? How do they impact the end? And the end means, how do they impact their customers? Right. So if I'm doing some work that adds zero value to my customer, as an employee, I should be empowered to say, why are we doing this? And ask that tough question. And know that if the answer is, it's the way we've always done it, that's a problem.
Right.
Organizational change is a reality. We, as leaders, sometimes lose sight of the fact that day in and day out, change is 2 steps ahead of us, whether we're planning for it or not. And we need to know how to lead our teams through it and how to have our team members address change positively and actively rather than actively resisting it, which is a human instinct that we have. Just say no first and then think it through and figure out what to do. But if we can actually say, okay, I get what it is. I know why we're doing it. I know what I get out of it. And again, I know what our customer gets out of it. If we have these thoughts living and breathing in our corporate cultures, businesses can grow and scale at will.
I find this really an interesting one. I've been talking to my own team recently about operational change. And one of the things that happens as an entrepreneur, as you scale a business, you reach a point where you don't have 10 people, you don't have 20 people, you don't have 50 people, you don't have 100 people, you have a couple hundred folks and maybe 1,000 people. And processes that used to be very quick suddenly become bureaucratic, and nobody wants to stick their neck out, and you suddenly fall victim of all the things that entrepreneurs hated, or like myself, about big businesses, where you would raise a topic and the answer always was like, well, we really should bring a team of people together to discuss that topic. And so how you build nimble solution making processes, agile solution making processes that can move quickly is something that I'm personally trying to, I guess, go through as the company scales to the next level. And I imagine a lot of companies are facing that stuff. But I mean, right now, for you, as companies kind of come out of this pandemic or have been going through this pandemic, and some of the social justice issues, the diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, how are companies facing these challenges, and what have been some of the interesting approaches that you're seeing coming forward?
The issues with diversity and inclusion, for me personally, as a person of a certain age who grew up with parents who were actively involved in the civil rights movement and coming into the world in the 70s, coming of age in the 80s, I thought that we had, in the United States, addressed some significant issues, right? I lived in a bubble of innocence, of, naivete, whatever, however we want to, frame that. And as a person who is also Jewish, right, there are multiple different levels that in the last several years have exploded around us in ways that, we weren't ready for. And I had through my whole life believed that we had made progress. And it's a really harsh reality to, see the light of day. And leaders are trying to do good things and the right things. And I think that it's really important that we have open, honest conversations. I know that as a person, right, I am going to say something stupid sometime with the best of intentions. And it has to be okay to make that mistake and learn from it. And
Yeah,
as we
and not
start,
end up, I guess canceled, right? That would
right,
exactly.
we're human, and we all are, we should all want to learn on an ongoing basis. Continuous learning should be part of who we are. And for business leaders, doing something I think is still better than doing nothing. And, it is okay to, crawl, walk, then run. That we need to learn through practice and experimentation. And so bringing the conversations into the workplace, tackling them directly and learning from peer-to-peer interaction and, listening to what employees really need and not making assumptions that we know what it is. Because again, I can, speak for myself. I know that I don't know more than I actually know.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I think that a lot of topics have been raised for many, many decades, but clearly there has not been enough progress. There certainly has been, the challenges, the systemic challenges that exist that need to be wrestled with and adjusted and evolved to come up with better solutions. So today in business, we're going through this I guess almost I'd say it's like a watershed moment where if anything, COVID sped up the digital, this acceleration of digital change. How are your organizations adapting to this, and what are the things that they're concerned about?
So, the pandemic forced everybody to think differently. And, in the beginning, right, we saw leaders sort of stop and freeze. And I kind of talk about it as, and we hold our breath and we wait and we hope that, it was going to go away in 2 weeks. Well, all right,
Exactly.
obviously we didn't, it didn't go away in 2 weeks. And to continue doing business, we had to just do things, right? There were reports, countless studies that say, digital transformation has been a topic in business for more than 20 years. And for more than 20 years, digital transformations, big undertakings, projects failed. Guess what? In 1 year, we did more digital transformation than had been done in the decade prior, just to keep the lights on and keep things working.
I mean, I always think about it along those lines of there were always those 1 to 2 executives that were part of the leadership team that basically stopped those transformation projects or underfunded them for various reasons. And during the pandemic, those votes basically were like eliminated. It was basically like all gung ho, let's do this.
Well, it was about survival, right? We went into, I get you, we can call it like what our lizard brains, right? It was fight or flight. We had to do something. And businesses that never had budget, had never even considered the impact of changing their business model, had no choice. And those who held their breath for too long, right, went away. And there are also those that went away simply because everything was stacked against them. And that's unfortunate. And our recovery with our truly small businesses, our mom and pop retail restaurant type businesses, we have a long tail for them to come back around and recover. And the playing board has changed. And if they will, it'll be hard fought. But we have to, again, right, we need to keep moving forward. So we need to learn that those agile decisions, the yes, no, now, left, right, we are capable as businesses of making those changes and working that fast. Is it sustainable? No.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I'd love to tweeze in and dig a little deeper on that question about is it sustainable and no, because one of the things that I'm wrestling with was you know my business was more efficient, more innovative, more nimble than we've ever been over the last year. And yet now, there's so much pressure to go back to the old ways of, going to trade shows and events and all of these things. And I'm sitting there going like, man, I can't believe that we're all rushing back to the old way. Like, but I think there must be a happy medium. What's your thought on that?
So that desire to go back, right? That is human instinct because the status quo was comfortable, right? We're familiar with that pattern, that cadence. It feels right. Going back to that word safe, it's never going to truly go back. Because that's just not what we do as humans, right? We've changed things, and so we're going to move forward. But how we move forward is going to be different. There are people who will never want to go to a convention, a conference, and be in a large group of people that they don't know of, thousands of people. Stranger danger is a childhood phrase that kind of has been running through my head as I've been deciding what conferences to go to as we start moving forward. But sustaining what we did during the pandemic is physically exhausting. We were in that fight or flight mode and we were responding, reacting, and we can't do that, right? The rate of burnout and the ability to continue to make decisions at that rate is physically and mentally exhausting. So moving forward, right, we've learned some things. We can be agile as leaders. We can empower our people to make some decisions, in real time, off the cuff, see what happens, get an outcome, make a choice, and move forward with that information. Everything should never go back to being a decision by committee, right? That never drives anything forward because those naysayers are so good at stalling and slowing. So we've learned, and we need to apply those learnings.
Yeah, and you said that you work with a lot of like SMBs, these small to medium sized
Mhm.
businesses, and I'd be curious. We read about these big companies. I think there was a big article about the CEO of Morgan Stanley who was essentially driving his workers back to the office in New York, and if you don't return, then we're going to cut your pay because you live in a different geography than New York City, so therefore you should make less money. It was very draconian.
Oh,
But I'd be curious what SMBs are thinking about and how they're managing those types of things.
so over the last year, I've had an interaction with lots of different businesses, SMBs, large enterprises, even some government agencies. Right. And everybody's trying to make the best decisions that they can. And what I'm hearing and what I like from what I'm hearing are those leadership teams that are actually asking their employees, what do you want? How do you feel safe? Right? Because there is a percentage of the employee base who will always be more productive in an office environment with people around, a sounding board over here, and we can share some thoughts and we can do that. And that's great. There will always be people who are significantly more productive alone. And depending on their role in the organization, that also plays a part. I've been watching one company trying to deal with, we're coming back in a hybrid mode. And this mode means that, so many days of the month you need to be in the office and so many days you can be remote. Okay, maybe. But when you start looking at, again, somewhat larger companies and you have an IT team and you have resources who are on call 24/7 for a week at a time, and they're, being 100% remote doesn't impact their productivity. It actually may make their job easier. Coming up with those hard and fast policies, I think we really should learn from the last year that sometimes the policies need to get thrown out the window and we need to have guidelines, right? And we need to empower middle management, the people and the supervisors who deal with employees day in and day out to set the rules of engagement in the standard operating model and not try and do it from the top. From some of the smaller businesses that I've been talking with, right, they sat down and again, that under 100 employee type, mindset, and had conversations. And a percentage of the employees said, hey, we really like working remotely. And hey, we left Manhattan and I'm now in Hawaii where my family is, and I can do my job from here and I don't have to be in Manhattan. And they've come back with blended definitions of, by role, what a work schedule should look like. And that there's still a point in time once a quarter where we will have a group event in person somewhere and we will as a team come together. Things aren't black and white, right? We live in the grays and we should own it and let our policies and our expectations give and take for the needs. And it doesn't have to be, a dictatorship, right? One size doesn't fit all. And I think that's the
Yeah, no,
biggest
I
opportunity.
actually, I really like that. I like the point that you're making about empowering middle management
Mhm.
to essentially apply guidelines as they see fit, as is appropriate for their teams.
Yeah.
That seems really wise, and certainly not something that I'm hearing. I think everyone's probably falling into that trap of, I need to have a grand vision, a beautiful plan, and beautiful plans, when they're put onto the battlefield, always fall apart immediately.
And we do need to have the big vision. But when did big vision and HR policy align? They're not. HR policy isn't about a big vision. An executive team should have a vision for the future. Operational teams should make it a reality. And
Right.
so I think, I would describe some of it as, you stretch the rubber band, and we did that right last year, stretched everything. And now we're snapping back and overcompensating. And we need to just stop and take that time out and say, we can do better. That's that desire to go back to the old way, and let's move forward and make better decisions. And that agility in leadership, right? Our C-suite leadership team really should be focused on where we're going. Operations is responsible for how we get there. And there should be that division so that the vision is big and it is grand and it is hard to get to, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. But we get the teams with the knowledge to, come up with how we execute to it, and empower them to do it.
So let's just change gears slightly. How did you approach the pandemic yourself? I mean, how were you working, and how did you stay sane in this whole process?
The pandemic changed a lot. When it started, I had my grandmother was visiting from the Midwest and out in Arizona to get out of the cold, right, and enjoy some time. And just as we were getting ready to send her home, the world shut down. And so that was an extended change in kind of how my life operates. We had a college kid who was on spring break who came home to, we're sheltering in place. And he said, thank you, no. I'm going, I'm fine. I'll be somewhere. It's all good. So you're right. It shook everything up. Fortunately, my business has run out of my home office for a decade. So how I do business didn't change much, but I did get to experiment and test the things that I can do with a group in this virtual environment is almost limitless. I used to believe that facilitating group sessions required being in a big room with whiteboards and flip charts and all of these, tools. I can do it more effectively in this format and with all of us in little squares on the screen, because we don't have the side by side conversations and the distractions of the things that happen in a big group setting in a large room. We can stay much more focused and actually accomplish more in less time. So it was a fascinating learning experience.
Yeah, and certainly I think with a changed family dynamic and a situation around you is always a fun balance. But I'm hoping everything, all of your loved ones are safe and well. It's been quite a year for the world. So as you're looking towards the future and working with companies, what's top of mind for them, and what do you think are going to be the key topics that people are going to be pushing over the next year?
So I think that the focus right on getting back to normal is going to drive us for a while. And, and I don't like the phrase the new normal. I personally want to, as leaders, embrace the idea that abnormal is normal and that we need to just be ready for the next thing because the next thing is coming. Whether it's an economic downturn, another pandemic type experience, there's always something else that's out there. And building in how we run our business with that mindset we've been talking about, agility at the leadership level, and that ability to, and it's the work that we do, build in adaptive transformation. How do we empower our teams to constantly embrace change and do it productively and get results, grow, and scale? And I think that there's a real opportunity for leaders at the executive and middle management levels to think differently, to empower their teams, to build skills and capabilities across functions in ways that they haven't before, so that as things change, right, we're able to pull the levers and keep everything righted so that we can move forward and we can get rid of that imbalance of fear and that imbalance of resistance to the next idea. Really being able to focus on being innovative internally is an opportunity for all leaders to set their business paradigm for growth, and it is resilient and for those unexpected changes, right? If we have those skills and those capabilities, we weather the storms more effectively.
I think we have the quote of the discussion today, Lisa. Abnormal is the new normal. I love it. I completely agree. And I think probably, right on, everyone seems to be now talking about potential inflation that might be coming in the near future and how that's going to impact everything. I don't think we've had a major inflation rate since like the late 70s. So I think it's going to be quite a shock to people. But we're moving into great worlds. Yeah.
We have two generations in the workforce who have not experienced an inflation cycle as kind of grown-ups. I don't really remember it. My kids certainly don't, right? So as our baby boomers are leaving the workforce and our millennials are coming of age in management and leadership, and Gen Z is hitting the workforce, the pandemic was a first catalyst for a series of changes that we're all going to experience that will be firsts for all of us.
Yeah, it's going to be quite I'd like to say an exciting time, but certainly more change is afoot for all of us. And Lisa, it's been great to talk to you about how your company and how your clients have been thinking about organizational change and all the issues that they're wrestling with during the pandemic and how they're planning for the future. Thank you so much for joining us on Uncaged today. If someone wants to get in touch with Lcubed and with you, Lisa, where should they go?
The website is lcubedconsulting.com or lisallevy.com, and be able to contact me directly from those websites.
That's great. Well, listen, we've been speaking with Lisa L. Levy of Lcubed Consulting. She's been our guest today on Uncaged. Uncaged is a show that provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Lcubed, Lisa's company, is working with small to medium-sized businesses as well as government organizations, as well as some large businesses on some of these major organizational changes that we're facing because of the pandemic, because of kind of the evolutionary changes. And as I said a minute ago, Lisa, your quote, abnormal is the new normal, is a really, really powerful one. And I think it really goes back to kind of that the processes that you guys put in place, which is that, the pandemic was one challenge. Guess what? We're going to have another big challenge. So you better have processes to figure out how you handle these things. How do you deal with this stuff? How do you lead through these types of opportunities and challenges? So thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Absolutely my pleasure, Bant. Thank you so much.
Cheers.